So in the early days at Prana, most of us were in our 20s, and I feel like I grew up at Prana. The building we moved into was old. It used to be a retirement home for doctors, so it was kind of dilapidated. There was not much in the landscaping. There was a huge bougainvilleas growing everywhere, and on a Saturday we did Dharma Day, and we would tear out the bougainvilleas with our bare hands, with gloves. And at one point we planted a garden in the back where the labyrinth is. Mostly the garden grew zucchini, so we had zucchini almost for every meal. And we cooked our own meals. We took turns cooking meals. We cleaned the house ourselves. We painted the inside of it. I remember painting the laundry room this kind of a bright green, which I got a lot of complaints about. And then we also had painted the hallways besides our own rooms, and in the West Wing, each door had a different color. And the children and their parents lived in the lower West Wing, and everybody lived in the rest of the house. And we worked hard. We worked at getting along with each other. We had a lot of adventures. One time we did this fast as a whole house. Remember, one of David Giorgio discovered this fast where you just had broth for like 7 days and did enemas, while you're taking the broth. So the whole house went on this fast. And remember, we'd go into the dining room for our broth every night. And it was it was quite an experience. And then one time there was like a ringworm infestation. And so we had to everybody had to clean their sheets every day. So I remember Polly and Candy and some other people would go and wash everybody's linens. And I didn't go into this, but then we would have this inspection at night. Should I go into this? We would have this inspection at night. There was one of the residents he had experience in the medical profession. He wasn't a doctor, but he would knock on our door early in the morning and inspect us for ringworms, because that's when they came out. So you can imagine where.
Talk about when JR would kick people out.
Oh, okay. So we could, there was a lot of complaining. We were young. A lot of us weren't used to that hard physical labor. And we would complain a lot about all the work we had to do, or there'd be grumbling. And JR would come to the house meetings, and I don't remember actually complaining to JR. It was more like an inner complaint, and maybe some people complained out loud, but JR knew. He kind of knew what we were thinking, even without us telling him. And he would talk to us about our negativity and our complaining, and that, he would shut it down if we continued. So I remember one house meeting, he came and he said he was going to shut it down. And we were like pleading with him not to shut it down. We said we would change. We would turn a new leaf. We would be more positive. And he ended up keeping it open. So we had a lot of experiences at Prana. We had the first PAT training. We called it the PI training, where we all slept in the living room together. We did everything together. We all slept in our sleeping bags in the living room. We ate together. We did our processes together. I think it lasted like 5 days or a week. And I remember I felt like I was in jail. It was very regimented. And we got to know each other really well. I mean, we had some hilarious times, and it was an amazing experience. We shared with each other, and we.
Can you talk about the Texaco station? Were you with Jim at the time?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that and how that came about from your point of view?
Okay. Well, UMan Texaco was a business that was an MSIA business. It was started by Ted Drake. And part of the UMan Enterprises was UMan Texaco. Because my ex-husband was a really, really good mechanic. So they probably rented this gas station where my ex-husband, Jim Matson, was the mechanic. And then there was David Morton and David Allen were pumping gas and working at the Texaco station. Jim was repairing cars. Everybody brought their cars there, and but it was owned by MSIA.
And what else did you do? Were you part of? Were you at? Let's see, you did Prana. You did gas station. Is there anything?
I was in Berkeley.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Okay, so I didn't. Yeah, when I first started in MSIA, I just went to what I thought were astrology meetings, and they played a tape of this. They called JR at that time a psychic, and they didn't say much more about him. And so I love the energy in those meetings. So at one point, they said John Roger was going to come to Berkeley from LA and do services and do a seminar. So the first time I saw JR, he came to this hall in Berkeley, and with all the staff, and they all had their turtlenecks and their suits on, and I thought they were kind of an unusual crew because most of us were hippies. And he's gave a seminar, and it was recently a SAT tape this past year, and when he gave his seminar, I felt like he was talking to me. I don't know how he did it. There was a lot of people in that auditorium, but I felt like what he was saying was really about me. He's talked about how people would leave their families or their spouses to follow, the spiritual path. And I did. I had a boyfriend, and I left him to be more involved in MSIA. And
where was this in Berkeley?
What was it? That was a seminar.
No, where?
It was a hall in Berkeley. I don't know exactly where. Or maybe it was San Francisco.
Can you talk about it again? And who was in the room? Describe it a little bit more.
Okay, I went the first time I ever met JR. I was told he was coming to do a seminar it was either San Francisco or Berkeley, and a lot of us went. The auditorium was filled with people wanting to hear JR. And JR came with the staff. There were 3 guys on staff, and everybody had a turtleneck sweater, and they had their suits on, and we all thought it was kind of strange how they were dressed, because we were all from our Berkeley garb, our hippie garb. And he just gave his seminar, and and I felt like he was talking to me. What he was saying, it was, the people in the room at Berkeley at that first seminar. I remember there was Rachel Jane, who was then.
So start off again and say, I think the seminar was at Berkeley, and the people in the room were, today they're still around, and they were.
Okay, when I went to my first seminar with JR, there were a lot of people in the room, and most of them, or a lot of them, are still around today. There was Rachel Jane, Cheryl Allen, wait, let me think. Cheryl Allen, Jillian Francis, John Cawley. Some of them aren't.
Was Russell and David Allen there?
David Allen, try, because some of them aren't, so I'm trying to remember the ones that are. Who? Oh yeah, Phil and Brooke Danza. Alan Glasgow put it together. Jim Shear.
Was Jim Shear married to Barbara?
Yeah, she's married. He was married to Barbara.
Were they together then?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So can you talk about? We're almost done. Can you talk about?
Oh, Kathleen Saffron.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Kathleen Saffron.
Can you talk about at least one or two anecdotes that you've had with JR, like really powerful moments that?
In Berkeley or?
Anywhere.
Okay. Well, one of them was when I first, I don't know if it was, I think the very, very first time, and I came to LA to go to the first conference. I think it was the Conference of Love. And I don't think I had actually met JR personally at that time. I think I had just seen him in a seminar. Well, I might have met him personally. But I remember I saw him a ways across the room, and I really wanted to move to LA because I just felt I wanted to go to live seminars with JR. The light seemed so powerful in Los Angeles, and I never said anything to him. It was just kind of a desire that I really wanted to move here, and I had no idea how I would do it. You know, I was a single mom, didn't have a lot of money. And he came up to me and he said, you know, Jackie Peterson is looking for a roommate. She's moving to LA. And it's kind of like he had answered my wish, my desire to move down. It's like he knew, he really knew. And he really guided me a lot with my son. Because I was a single mom, and sometimes I would lose my patience with him. And I remember him coming up to me before a seminar and saying, "Don't you lay a hand on him." You know, and it's like not that I beat him up or anything, but it was like he kind of knew without me even saying anything. And he was kind of like a father to my son until I got married. He used to really support me with Jamal. He would just tell me Jamal is just a really special being. And
what was the craziest thing that happened in Prana?
The craziest thing? I think those pie trainings are pretty crazy. I mean, people were just really cutting loose. I don't know. I know, there was just a lot of stuff. I mean, we would have some of the guys would sign up for, you know, to cook dinner, and they wouldn't show up, you know. So one time, somebody didn't show up, and he just ordered pizza. You know, somebody had to call him and say, you know, you're supposed to cook our dinner tonight. And he just, ordered pizza for everybody. I remember there were a lot of disputes about the garden. Should we have a garden? Should we not have a garden? There were disputes about this cat called Cloud Puff showed up. And the kids at that time were like between maybe 4 and 6. They were really young. And the kids adopted this cat. It was a white cat, and they called it Cloud Puff. And they really wanted the cat at Prana. But no animals were allowed. So I remember having a house meeting, maybe more than one house meeting, just debating, should we keep Cloud Puff? And everybody had something to say about whether to keep Cloud Puff or not. So, and Cloud Puff ended up staying.
What did JR say?
I don't remember. He probably said it was okay because he ended up staying. But,
that's it. I just wanted to get the Prana.
Okay.
Is there another area that you like that you want to mention? Because I got Berkeley and
Yeah.
who was that?
There
I
was.
got Berkeley and Prana, so I'm good.
All right.
Is there anything?
All right. I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but when I was, before I got married, I was seeing my, I was dating my ex-husband, and nothing was happening, and but all we did is go to the movies, and that was it. And JR took him to lunch one time, and he was getting divorced from his previous wife, and he said, "Are you going to divorce Mary?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Are you going to marry Lori?" And it was like, and I guess he almost fell over because it was like nothing was happening at that point. But that was kind of, I just felt like JR was just looking out after us. He showed up at Prana a lot. He was just taking care of us.
And you guys finally married?
Finally married and finally divorced.
Did you have kids?
Not together. I love you, JR. I love you so much. And I don't know where I would be without you. I love you forever.
Beautiful.